we had the number one most popular spot in the Super Bowl 13 years in a row. Why? Because we gamed it.
Today's guest is a true legend in the world of advertising. You may know him as the creative genius behind the iconic Budweiser Wassup campaign, which didn't just sell beer, it became a pop culture phenomenon that's talked about 20 years later. He's been the mastermind behind groundbreaking work for brands like Volkswagen, Office Max, and many more. And he has been taking a viral approach before social media was even a thing. Vinny doesn't just make commercials, he creates moments that live in your head long after the ad is over. So please welcome the creative mind behind some of the most memorable ads ever made. Vinny, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I love that. I'm going to replay that introduction many times.
No need that to go viral.
Yeah. That was courtesy of me and ChatGPT. So
right.
thank you.
ChatGPT, of course.
I need to write mine on there.
You got to just do it every day. Make it a thing,
Well, I want to pick your brain on, the iconic Wassup commercial. Or I'm not even saying it right. Wassup.
Wassup.
Wassup. You gotta get the deepness in there.
So, with that campaign, I remember now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did that debut at the Super Bowl, or when was that?
It didn't. It was supposed to. A lot of people think it was on the Super Bowl. Every year they bring out lists of the best Super Bowl spots of all time, and it's always the top 5 or 1 or whatever. It actually didn't debut on the Super Bowl. What happened was we were firstly, Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser, Bud Light, etc. They had 5 minutes in the Super Bowl every year. So that's 10 spots. So they wanted to make a good show of it, so they would produce about 30 ideas, right? Mm-hmm. Wassup was one of the ideas intended for Super Bowl 2000, but when the clients saw it and they saw how awesome it was, they decided to put it on the air immediately, which is unusual. They were like, fuck the Super Bowl. We're putting it on TV right now. So they put it on, I think it was NFL or something. I was there because I was watching it on a bar and when it was on TV, when it came on TV for the first time in a sports bar. And
that's going to be awesome.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was very funny because I would do this whenever I had a beer commercial. I would go to a sports bar and see the reaction. I would find out when it was airing for the first time, see the reaction of the crowd. And normally it was like, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's great. But Wassup, it was like stony silence for the first 2 times.
It's a little confusion.
Oh, no, we're dying here. It took a while, because it was a bit different. It just took a while to process that there wasn't a funny joke in it. And you have to just make up your mind whether it was funny or not. When we shot Wassup, we shot 5 things, all Wassup related, believe it or not. Yeah. Which is before we had any validation. We had the sequels ready to go,
Love that.
And so we aired one of the sequels on the Super Bowl instead of the main one that everybody talks about.
Oh, so that was a sequel, you're saying?
Yeah, we aired a sequel to the original on the Super Bowl.
Got it.
I do remember there being more than one. I would have sworn if somebody bet me, I would have said no, it's a Super Bowl commercial.
I know it's funny, and you know what it is. The media thinks that too. Every year, it's the best Super Bowl commercials ever, and we're in there. It's like, dude, that wasn't on the Super Bowl, but whatever. They wanted to have debuted on the Super Bowl for some reason. I don't know why, even though it was intended for it, but it didn't. I thought it was much better because by the time the Super Bowl came around, it was already a hit.
Yeah, some of the funniest commercials are Super Bowl, so I think we just assumed. And if that one played, I just remember I want to say the week after, everybody I talked to, if they called me, that's how they were. What's up? That's how they were all doing it. It was just like became a cultural thing.
We were going for the effect that we got. We weren't surprised when it was a hit. We were relieved when it was a hit.
So that kind of goes into my next question. You kind of already answered it, but it was more than just a funny commercial. It literally became a catchphrase, like to JR's point, embedded in pop culture. Yeah. So how did that happen? Was that the intent of let's make the catchphrase, or is that just something that happened after?
Well, what happened in my case, I worked on Bud Light before Budweiser at the same agency. And we had a hit, we on Bud Light, not me. We on Bud Light had a hit called I Love You Man. And I lived through that, and I saw that, and that was a catchphrase hit. Everybody was saying, "I love you, man." They couldn't not say it. Everybody loved saying it.
It's true, because I do remember doing that too.
Yeah, they couldn't not say it. Everybody loved saying it because, it was something you could say to your friends when they were drunk, and it was cool, it was funny, it was all this. And it had a social purpose. And I lived through that, and I remember thinking, why is this a hit? What about this is a hit? And I remember thinking about it and all that lovely stuff. And but
Right.
I also realized you can't just will it into being. You know what I mean? "I love you, man" was
Yeah.
not a, it was an accidental catchphrase hit. I would say it was a great commercial, brilliant commercial, and one of the best commercials I would say beer commercials ever done. But it had this catchphrase in it. And I had lots of reasons to think about that for a while. So when I came across the short film that became the basis for the Wassup ad, I had this in my head. And what made me think about this was when I got and I had a VHS tape of this, remember, this is the prehistoric age. And I would show this VHS, which I loved. I just thought it was funny. And I would show it to people. And everybody I showed it to, when I'd meet them later on, they'd all go, "What's up?" They couldn't not say "What's up," right? And I would go, "What's up?" And we both laugh and go, "That was funny, wasn't it?" And so when they wanted something for the Super Bowl, I was like, you know what? If we do this right, we'll get the catchphrase. We can compress this short film into 60 seconds. It'll work really well. Everyone will be saying "What's up," right? And that was the goal. Like I was like, that would be enough. If we got everyone in America shouting "What's up," that's the dream. That was my wildest dream, right?
So you were just doing that naturally in your life. You're like, hey, let's turn that into a commercial.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was special. I knew there was something special about it. It was very funny. There was no funny, but there was nothing jokey about it. There was no joke in it. Nothing funny happened in it, but it was super likable, and it was also overwhelming.
Right.
It didn't ask, like most beer commercials, they kind of beg you to laugh. They got a joke point where they go, "Please laugh at us. It's funny." Well, I hated that format, by the way. I just detested it. I hated doing. I'd done them, I'd done commercials like that, and I'd developed a real hatred of that form. Right? Wassup was something else. It had all those things. You laughed at it, you liked it, it was cool, but it didn't have a joke in it. And I think that's one of the things that separated it from the beer category was we weren't trying to be fun. I wasn't trying to be funny. I was trying to have an impact.
Yeah.
And there's a difference, I was trying to be cool as well, because in beer advertising, the only thing we're doing is recruiting. You're always recruiting the young. By the age of 26, everybody's beer preferences are locked down and done, right? We're talking to young people, and young people like cool things. Right, so this was a conscious effort to do something that it's not like the other beer ads you've seen before. No, this is different. This is for you.
I just remembered I had a shirt that said it.
Yeah.
I don't think it was official merch. I think it was like I probably saw it hanging at Walmart or something. I was like, I want that.
I used to collect those because I was obviously I would in Venice Beach in LA. They have a big T-shirt kind of lane of T-shirts that reflect the culture, and there was tons of "What's up," even T-shirts about subsequent spots we did and all that. So it really did. It took over the culture to a degree that shocked us, because we were our wildest dream. My wildest dream was "I love you, man." And what happened with "What's up" was we had good timing to be there at the beginning of the internet, and there wasn't a lot of stuff to watch. And our thing was very easy to watch on a shitty screen, on a shitty computer with a shitty link up. And it worked in that context. And that's something we couldn't have foreseen. But that ultimately was what separated it at the end of the day, because that made it viral. Everybody emailed it around. That's the thing. People were emailing it around.
That's so funny. Like that was the original. Yeah,
that
was
Hotmail.
The original
email forwards.
If we didn't have Hotmail, we wouldn't have had Wassup,
So, okay, the ad dropped. It became a cultural phenomenon. Was there a shift in Budweiser's brand identity after that success of that campaign? Did it change the way the consumers viewed the brand, or?
It did, because here's the thing. The problem with a brand like Budweiser in America is much like the problem we'd have with Guinness in Ireland. In that it's been all your life, you've been looking at this logo and seeing people drink it, and it becomes so familiar that it becomes invisible and you take it for granted. So the trick with brands like that is to sort of make them feel fresh again for a new generation, because the brand is built. Budweiser's not changing, the bottle's not changing, the label's not changing, nothing's changing. The only thing that's changing is the people who are drinking it. So it was intended for that audience, you know what I mean, to do that.
That's actually an interesting thing about that I was going to bring up about. There's a lot of funny commercials, and the Super Bowl always has funny commercials, and then there's just sometimes during the year there's funny commercials.
Yeah.
A lot of them still miss the mark though on actually getting anything from it, right? And actually getting people to use it. And I feel like Budweiser's always been good at that to begin with, making it feel cool to drink Budweiser.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. It's hard to be funny, right? Number one. It's just hard to be funny.
Yeah.
It's hard to sell work. It's hard to execute. I would say no, it's hard to execute funny, right? To execute it well, just, to the standard of the Super Bowl. You got 120 million people watching. It better be good. Don't waste your time. Don't waste other people's time. The bigger struggle, then, okay, it's funny, but that's not enough. It's got to be pointed. The humor has to be pointed in such a positive direction for the brand that it just lands, because the way I always looked at beer advertising, I used to work in a bar in Ireland, right? And this bar was the busiest bar I've ever been in my life, right? And I worked there, right? And I've often thought that, and I could never understand why, because it didn't look great. It was not a charming bar by any stretch of the imagination. But you walked into it and you're like, you know what, I'm going to stay here. I like this pub. And similarly with beer advertising, you have to hit the right note for beer, I'll give you a good example. The most interesting man in the world hits the right note for beer. That's the same note that Wassup hit, right? You watch it and you're like, fuck it, I'm having a Dos Equis. I don't even like Mexican beer, but I'm having a Dos Equis. I don't have a bias against Corona, but no, I do. I'm a Dos Equis man. That's exactly what it is. You got to hit that note that makes you go, fuck it, I'm having a beer. That's it. And that's the trick. And a lot of people don't seem to realize that,
right?
I think. But that's the net of it. If you look at all the great ads for alcohol, Southern Comfort Man, is a great example of that too. You look at Southern Comfort Man, the guy on the beach, and you look at that guy walking up the beach, you're like, fuck it, give me a Southern Comfort. I don't even know what it is. Give me it.
I want to be that guy.
So, question about that. So, okay, so you're coming up with this concept. You said you worked with Budweiser or Bud Light before. Was there any pushback or hesitation from the client or anyone else involved with like the simplicity and like the casualness of this concept? Because it was different, to your point.
The truth is, and I wish I could say that I had a valiant battle to throw us up and I won in the end. It was the complete opposite of that. They took one look at, these were good, they knew what they were doing. Anheuser-Busch knew what they were doing, right? And they looked at advertising as a means to an end, How do we get people into our brand? Oh, advertising works. Let's do that then.
Right.
So they looked at the tape, the shitty tape that I had, and they were like, yeah, okay, that could work. Let's try that one. Okay.
There's down.
That was it. Go ahead. Because you got to remember, they were doing 30 other ideas at the same time.
Right.
And they by no stretch were they like, Vinny, did that work out okay? They just gave us the money to go and do it. And they stayed out of our way entirely. I mean, they didn't even show up for the shoots.
Is that common or no?
No, that was not common at all. Anheuser-Busch were they're a great organization. So,
right.
I don't know what you think of Budweiser beer. I think it's great. I used to drink it a lot. Everything about that organization was excellent. Like the beer, the logistics, the recycling program, you name it. They had 120 years of making Bud,
Yeah.
It was always my beer. I don't know if it was that commercial, but it was for a long time. It was my beer. I'm definitely more craft beer now. But if I don't have one, it's probably gonna be Budweiser would be my choice.
With talking about like the creative process of creating like an ad like that, has it for you changed at all since the Wassup ad, or are you taking the same approach today?
Well, it depends on the situation. Wassup, right. Budweiser was normally in advertising. You're trying to build a brand, right? You're trying to get it to the next level. Well, Budweiser was already at the top level. It was built. There's nothing going to change about it, And that's different. That's a different situation. And it had a special place in the culture, So my thinking was, if you have a special place in the culture like Budweiser does, or Guinness in Ireland, you're already there. So stop acting like you're trying to get there. The advertising is acting like it's down here. No, you're up here.
Right.
So move from where you are. I was trying to step off of where it was in the culture to somewhere else, as opposed to doing an ad that kind of like, oh yeah, I like Budweiser. You've grown up with it. I always thought that Budweiser's problem was over familiarity, basically.
So, okay, talk me through like, so for young creatives that are just getting into the industry now, what's like, if you had to say like the most important element of creating an ad that stands out in a crowded market? I mean, you were talking about don't just, read the room, understand what everyone else is doing. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to do that, but like,
Yeah.
what's a important element that you would tell them?
I would say no. The most important thing is know what's been done before.
Yeah.
That's the most. If you don't know that, you don't know anything, right? So you got to study. Like I studied, like Laundrette and all those classic '80s things. Man, I was obsessed with. I was obsessed with anything that popped. You know, anything in the culture that, the big thing is you got to immerse yourself in the culture. Biggest thing. Like when I came to this country first, I realized that if I wanted to be in advertising in America, all my references from my youth were no use to me. Nobody knew what I was talking about. Nobody grew up in the 80s in the UK and Ireland, right? They're all in America. So I realized very quickly that I had to become an expert on America and American culture, you know? And so I was into that culture in a big way, actively. It was interesting to me, but I knew more about America than most Americans, you know? Why? Because I studied it like a second language. And
Yeah.
if you don't know the culture, you're not going to score. It's that simple. You have to be in tune with the culture. You have to know what's going on, and you have to have a feeling for what people like. Because that was my thing. I wanted everybody to just love everything all the time. That was my goal, right? Love it. I don't want you to like it. I was not interested in you liking things. Fuck that. I was like, you gotta love it. I want this to hit hard with you.
Yeah.
And that was that's how I felt, and that's why I did the things I did, because I wanted the effect that I wanted to do. Like, I loved the stuff that I grew up watching, and Beat Bartlebogle Haggerty stuff, and the stuff in the '90s from the UK as well. I love that as well. So, and that stuff hit hard, you know what I mean. Like it's not enough to just get a reaction. I wanted it to stay with you.
Yeah.
And so as a result of the unique experiences I'd had on Bud Light, seeing I Love You Man pop and Yes I Am and Budweiser and all this stuff, I was like, I'm ready to do my version of that.
The frogs. I just remember when you were saying that.
That one drove me insane. I hated the frogs, but it was a huge hit. So I couldn't argue with that part of it, But I wasn't a fan of animatronic animals selling beer.
It was funny. Do you remember the one? I think it was Budweiser, right? Running for president, or was it Miller? Trying to run for president or something? And then Budweiser came out and said the Budweiser's response was a commercial that said basically like, "Did you hear that Miller's disqualified because they're owned by a South African company or something?"
There you go.
And I was just like, that was cold. That was cold because instantly destroyed in my opinion, instantly for the American beer drinker guy, they were just like, what?
No bad as which is owned by Belgians.
It was
but the thing about that was that like that was the situation. It was very much a corporate war. Our enemy was Miller and Heineken, big enemies of Heineken and Boston Beer and anything that was an alternative to Budweiser.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to say is, like the future of advertising. Do you have any thoughts on where it's going, what that looks like? Any thoughts at all?
Well, I mean, brands will always need to compete, right? I would say that advertising. The goal of advertising won't change. The delivery method will change.
Yeah.
But I would say too that not all mediums lend themselves to advertising. So if you're trying to get if you're trying to get a cultural effect now, it's going to be harder because people's attention is diffused across so many platforms, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean it was never easy either, And so the lesson I would draw from, because we had kind of perfect situation, the image you have of advertising of, the nervous client going, I'm not sure about this one, guys. I've got issues. This was the opposite of that. Very opposite. So we had freedom. We had a chilled out client. We're on the Super Bowl. Relax, And so we had the freedom to do it. And so if you're trying to do what I did for Wassup now, you just got to become a master of the medium that you're trying to dominate. That's the key. You know, you've got to game it. Like, that's the truth. You've got to game whatever system you're in to get a result that no one else is getting. That's the ultimate thing is, and if you're not aware of that, you're never going to game the system. But that's what I was doing. That's what we did. We gamed the Super Bowl every year. You know, we had the number one most popular spot in the Super Bowl 13 years in a row. Why? Because we gamed it. We were good at it. We got used to it. But people are reluctant to do it. They're reluctant to commit to it. You know, That's the truth of it. You know, to commit personally and to commit as a brand. You know, there's a reason not many people do this. You know, it's not that you don't just wizard it up. You know, but I mean, I'll say the best thing about Wassup for me, and this was completely I didn't see this coming, was thanks to email, it became a worldwide hit. That was the thing that blew my mind, was that this thing became the world campaign. People were emailing this thing around Japan, Norway, every country. It was a hit in every country. You know, they made like all the parodies that were made of this thing. You know, that was the biggest thing. That's the real benefit of this, is that you go everywhere. You know, if you do something like that. Like, I'm sure lots of people have watched the Old Spice commercial in the UK, and it was never intended for the UK. You know what I mean?
Yep. No, that's good. Well, thanks, Vinny. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing just your wisdom and experience in advertising. It's like really, really cool for us.
Oh, thank you. That's good. It's nice to chat with you guys too.